Colleagues, if we can make a start to the meeting. Okay, so welcome. First item, any apologies from anyone? Yeah, Councillor Hussain. Okay, anyone else? Okay. Not aware of any others. Sorry, I beg your pardon, and Christine Durant, the Strategic Director. Agenda item number 2, late items, there are none. 3, there are no receipts of petitions. 4, identification of urgent items which calling will not apply, there are none. 5, declarations of interest. Okay, there's none. Minutes of the meeting held on 4th of October, so if we can just have a look at those and approve them. Has anybody? Yeah, will they be moved? Can I have a show of hands to approve them, please? Okay, yeah, approved, thank you. Okay, agenda item number 7 are the recommendations from Executive Scrutiny Board, and we'll take those as when they come up. Key decisions, the first one is 8, Council Tax Support Scheme. Over to Councillor Shanker, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the Council Tax Support Scheme, the Council Tax Benefit Scheme, which was abolished by central government, was replaced by the Council Tax Support Scheme. Earlier this year, Council approved a number of changes to the Council Tax Support Scheme, and recently we're proposing one more change, which is effective from the 1st of April 2018, and that's...
Councillor Shanker, can I just pause you there? Gentleman at the back says he can't hear, so if you could just, I think you just get a bit closer.
Sorry there. Okay.
Thank you.
So the only change that we're proposing now is from the 1st of April is to increase the minimum contribution that certain households affected by disabilities would have to now change, or would have to pay 30% instead of 27.5%. Everything else previously agreed in the scheme in January stays as is. That's just the one change, and it's described in Appendix 2.
Okay, so any questions or contributions from anyone? Okay, so coming to approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Can I have a show of hands, please? Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item number 8 is acquisition of temporary accommodation, and in Councillor Hussain's absence, the officer will present. We have the officer to present the report. I've been brought to my attention that there actually is an additional recommendation, so there will be 2.1 and 2.2, and that's being circulated. Yeah, so that's going to be presented by the officer.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
As members will be aware, the Council has a statutory responsibility to accommodate homeless people when they're assessed as being in priority need. Whilst we assess the needs of those vulnerable households, we place them in temporary accommodation. Like most councils in the country, we often don't have enough temporary accommodation, and so those families end up in bed and breakfast, and that obviously isn't a good outcome for those households being in bed and breakfast, particularly if there's children involved. To remedy this, this proposal is that the council purchase an additional 6 homes as temporary accommodation. These will be purchased from the general fund at no net financial cost to the council, because the rental income from those homes will cover the management costs and maintenance costs of those homes. If I can then, Chair, just to help us enact that, as you said, I'd like to propose that we introduce another recommendation, 2.2, and that will read as follows. To authorise the Strategic Director of Communities and Place, in consultation with the Interim Director of Finance and Section 151 Officer and the Director of Governance and Monitoring Officer, to purchase suitable properties in accordance with recommendation 2.1, and that should just make the process of purchasing those properties a bit more efficient, Chair, a bit quicker and easier for us to purchase. Thank you.
Okay, any questions Councillor Holmes, please.
Just to say this is welcome. I feel it's there was a good debate last night at the scrutiny board, and I think we all agreed cross party that this was a good use of the right to buy receipts from that pot of money. My personal view is that giving families and those in need a roof over their heads rather than a more stable home environment rather than just a roof over their heads is the right way to go. The Homes First model, if you like, where we offer a more stable environment before then working to resolve whatever issues are within that family or that person. And so the Conservatives definitely welcome this, Chair. And one of the things I think the Scrutiny Board were debating last night as to whether we should do more, whether more money should be put into this area.
Okay. Councillor Skelton, please.
Thank you. Just wanted really to ask about, obviously often the issue with people moving on from temporary accommodation, if they're then going to move into other rented accommodation, is being able to afford a deposit. Do we have any plans, or do we already help people with a deposit guarantee scheme or similar?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on this occasion I tend to agree with Councillor Holmes. There simply isn't enough money to do the things that we should be doing. That's building more homes in this city. And I think we'll take Councillor Holmes at his word, and hopefully when Councillor Farid Hussain is back, then maybe he wants to talk to him about writing a joint letter to the relevant minister to point out the chronic problem with housing, not only in this city, but in cities throughout this country. And how many, it's not just the homeless, but the homeless we're talking about this evening, but homeless generally, where young people are struggling to get on the housing ladder. And certainly it's far better, as Councillor Holmes said, and I do agree with him, to provide permanent accommodation. It makes more sense. It's in terms of the individuals and the families, it makes more sense, and financially it makes more sense. But we need the resources to do that. So yes, we'll join with you, Councillor Holmes, in trying to talk to your government ministers to make sure that we can have the resources to make sure there are those homes for those people in the city that need it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any other additional questions, contributions from anyone? So Cabinet to approve the recommendation 2.1 and 2.2.
Councillor Scott wants an answer about
Okay.
deposit scheme.
Yes, if I can, Chair, we do have a rent deposit guarantee scheme, and in fact we have recently received some more funding from government in relation to homelessness, and part of the strategy to spend that money is to, amongst other things, expand the rent deposit scheme to try and enable more people on the housing waiting list or in need or at risk of homelessness to access private rented properties as opposed to just social housing. Thank you.
Councillor Skelton, you okay with that? Is anything else? All right. Okay, so Cabinet to approve the recommendations 2.1 and the 2.2 as circulated. Can I have a show of hands, please? Okay, that's great. That's approved. Subject, there was no specific recommendations for review and scrutiny other than the requested report to be brought for future meeting on the use of temporary accommodation, and I know that the officers will act on that for sure. So the next item is the new swimming pool complex. That's over to Councillor Shanker.
Thank you, Chair. So the new swimming pool complex at Moorways is one of 6 key pledges that this administration has made, and I'm happy to report excellent progress has been made on this project to date. Demolition of the existing swimming pool facility and the sports centre at Moorways is due to be complete by the end of this year. This report tonight seeks to allow Cabinet to approve a recommendation to full council, the next full council meeting, to increase the revenue budget from the prudent 20 million that we put in last year to 33 million to allow the facilities mix that we're proposing, a very exciting and comprehensive facilities mix that we're proposing, and indeed consulted the public on and had excellent feedback from. It's a pleasure to bring this report. It's a reflection on how hard the teams worked in a short period of time to bring such a comprehensive project to fruition. Tonight, Cabinet will be hopefully endorsing the proposals to increase our capital budget to allow this exciting scheme to come to fruition. We stick to our original project timescales and have a facility up, running and operating by 2020. So it's with that, Chair, I recommend to Cabinet we approve this report.
Okay, Councillor Raja, would you like to say anything on that? Okay. Councillor Holmes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think trying to summarise my contribution last night and others at the scrutiny board, clearly we do need a new swimming facility for the city. I think we all agree that. I mean, the arguments about more ways whether it should be reopened there, that's gone now, we accept that. But what we clearly have is Queen Street, it's end of life, past end of life. We need to do something about that, and you know, this administration is choosing to do that. Where we are, and the Conservatives are concerned, is we understand it's a main pledge for your administration, and therefore it's a priority, which means, you know, time is of the essence, if you like, and you want to push forward with this as soon as possible. We get that, but there was a couple of things within this report which do ring alarm bells potentially. The assumption that the base subsidy is 400,000 or thereabouts per year if the facility would be into a local trust or outsourced, managed by a commercial company or similar. That's one thing, that's a base, but the assumption is that that will happen, and that does carry risk, and that risk I understand, and it's mentioned in the Appendix 2, the Scrutiny Board recommendations. If the council failed to secure trust status or a commercial partner to manage and run the facility, we could be looking at a subsidy, a taxpayer subsidy of £1 million a year. Now, that figure, it could be a little bit less. I don't think, hopefully it wouldn't be any more, but that's my understanding, around £1 million per year. And that would not only be a significant hit per year for the taxpayers and the budget of this council, but it would also, I understand, potentially take us towards breaching VAT rules, which may be something that Mark could actually give us details on. So that risk, I don't think, is properly identified. Now, you may be absolutely confident that you will definitely deliver the two models, one of the two models that you specify in this report over how this facility is going to be run. And you're pushing an open door in terms of the Conservatives wanting a commercial partner for this kind of facility. We've had many debates about that. But the risk, I don't think, has been properly addressed in this report. And I think the public do need to know that there are risks involved. And we need to understand that the what-ifs of this. There's also some concern about, and it's linked to that, how commercial this facility is in design phase. We need to have a facility which obviously people want to use and delivers for the city. That obviously includes some traditional swimming facilities, but we all know that there has to be other things in that facility to make it commercially viable, commercially attractive, and actually gain the revenue that whoever's running it needs to make it a viable proposition. There was concern, and I do share that concern over the designs that we see in this report, that, let's call it the commercial element of the swimming pool, which is the play area, the slides, or whatever, the configuration is to be decided. But the actual space, there was concern last night that it's not awfully big, and may not represent a huge commercial draw, not only for people wanting to visit, but also a commercial partner looking at it and thinking, you know, why is this a proposition that we would maybe want to be involved in? You know, is there too much emphasis on the competitive swimming element, and the 50-metre pool is probably what we're saying. You know, they're the two things really which I think we do need to explore, and you need to understand as an administration and cabinet are taking this forward. Yes, we do need new swimming facilities, but we can't ignore the risk, and we need to get this right. We've had far too many times in the history of this city where things have been delivered, and now we're looking back and thinking, well, actually, it didn't deliver exactly what we hoped it would. It's nearly right, not absolutely right, and we can't make that mistake again on a project of this size.
That's an interesting contribution, Councillor Holmes. So, one thing I use the word explore and understand. What we would like to explore and also understand at some stage, or you made a commitment in your manifesto when the Moorways pool was first shut that you would build a new swimming pool. And you announced it, big fanfare to the media. Nobody scrutinised actually what your plans were beyond just the headlines. So, I would like to, in your words, understand and explore those plans. You must clearly have those plans. You've clearly done some work in identifying an operator. We would like to know who that operator. I think Councillor Shanker was quite specific on challenging your group about those plans, and no detail has come forward. We'd also like to look at the funding model that you were going to put forward, because the reality is what you were saying to the public through the media, that if you came to power at that time, when the Moorways first became an issue, you would build a new pool. So you must have carried out extensive discussions either with officers, and I appreciate they would have been confidential. You must have gone out and spoken to operators out there to put that pledge to the public. So we would be interested, and for the purposes, of course, is you are an elected member, you're rightly challenging this administration, holding us to account. We also need to hold you account to the pledges you're making to the city. And actually, if there are ideas there, because you're suggesting that actually you want to support the city in building a new pool, so suggest your ideas. If you've done clearly you've done extensive work on there, present us that information. Sit down with Councillor Shanker and present that information. It's very easy in opposition, and we've all been there, to make the contributions you make, but actually the intellectual part of that and the credibility side of it is coming forward with the detailed information behind your pledge. So I look forward, I think we all look forward, I'm sure our colleagues in the media also look forward, because I remember those headlines. The Conservatives plan, I'm sure they were, if I remember correctly. I know you made big fanfare about that pledge, so we'd all be interested to know what the details are. Because actually, if you're withholding that information, if you're suggesting that you came with a model that would work, would answer your own concerns, then surely to withhold that information to the city, actually, it kind of doesn't make sense. To deny the city vital information of how we could then build this pool as a city actually would be very, very helpful. So, let's just see those that come forward. Now, Councillor Shanker, is there anything you wanted to also address on there? Okay, I think Councillor Repton would like to come in.
Yeah, I'm rather confused. I'm unclear whether Councillor Holmes is in favour of this proposal or not. He seems to be saying, on the one hand, yes, we support it, but on the other, we have reservations. On the other, there are some risks. Well, of course, there are all risks in life, but there's no risk as great as, I can remember it being dubbed, I think it was in the media, Councillor Holmes last suggested, was Fantasy Island. It was a multi-million-pound complex on the banks of the river, but it was written on the back of a fag packet. There was no costings, there was no detail. It was just a bit of a puff of an idea to try to win a few votes. But what Councillor Shanker's come with this evening is a fully costed, fully worked out, thought through scheme which will meet the aspirations and the needs of the people of Derby. It is doable. Yes, there are, you may say, some slight risks, but we believe they're calculated risks in terms of bringing forward a facility the people of the city want. We've come forward with, no pun intended, concrete ideas which are doable, are achievable and deliverable, but rather than the Fantasy Island that Councillor Holmes that came up with, which has never seen the light of day, because it was a nonsense. That's what it was. Thank you, Chair.
I think the challenge, if the plans don't exist, then that was an attempt to mislead this council, to mislead the city, and it's an opportunity for Councillor Holmes to dispel that. I mean, I'm alleging that. I'm not saying you have misled the council for pure political headlines. I think it's been said, actually, that you've been quite boastful of the fact that you can make all these plans up because you're not going to be in power. Well, actually, if that was said, it has been said by your councillors, and again, I'm alleging that. That's one I kind of picked up. you know, I mean, I don't think that's right. But if you don't come forward with these plans, when you said you clearly in your manifesto, then actually you prove the point. So, you know, come forward, tell us the operator, let's go and have a dialogue with that operator, let's have a look at the financial modelling. If you've obviously spoken to some financial wizard in the Conservative Party, I mean, I know you've access for that information, do yourself some justice, gain some credibility in this council chamber to back up the points you're making, and let's work together on it. I think that's the most sensible thing to do. Councillor Skelton.
Thank you. I have a number of questions. First of all, what, if any, work has actually been done to prepare for one of the two delivery models, either the local trust or the outsourced delivery? Also, some issues. What about environmental sustainability of the project? The building efficiency. I looked in the within the report, and there was nothing mentioned about whether there is the intention to make it as thermally efficient as possible, and therefore obviously help to keep the running costs as low as they can be, or not. Looking at some of the diagrams, it looks to me like the space set out for seating for spectators on the 50-metre pool is not exactly large, which does mean obviously that impacts on the revenue that can be got from ticket sales for events, you know, which again, it all builds into the sustainability of the project ongoing. I know obviously that the decision has now been made to build it out at the Moorways site and not in the city centre, but I couldn't help noticing that one of the council's pledges is to increase footfall in the city centre by 10%. Well, certainly when Queen's Leisure Centre closes down, that's certainly going to have an impact on footfall in the city centre. So something needs to be done about that. Also on the finance side, obviously money is being borrowed, so we will in effect be paying a mortgage over a number of years. What amount will actually be paid out each year to repay the borrowing?
Okay, any other questions, contributions before I bring Councillor Shanker in to answer some of those? Okay, Councillor Shanker, please, thank you.
Okay, I'll try answering those questions with the hope they were genuinely put and not just to make some political points. I think yourself and Councillor Repton has addressed that. So, obviously, the project of this side, of this magnitude, is going to have risk. Every project which isn't as business as usual has some risk with it. There's a fully appraised risk plan, and we're managing that risk where we could managing it, or we mitigate it where we can mitigate it. There are risks around demolition, there's risks around the construction, and then there's risks around operation of a plant. A lot of the statistics for the operation of the plant are still being reviewed. We're looking at the best operating model for the council, and obviously we want to minimise any subsidy that the council and the taxpayer has to put towards this facility. I'm not really interested in saying we'll not put any subsidy into this facility. It will be a council facility for the people of Derby who will pay for this, and so they should benefit from that. So if there is a small subsidy, and we'll minimise that as much as we can, you know, I'll make no attempt to try and hide any potential subsidy, and if that's what it's needed to make this facility happen and make it viable and sustainable longer term, I have no problem in committing this council to doing that. But the work on the best operating model that is still being done, and we'll report back once that's completed, and the risks are being well monitored, managed, and as required mitigated. As far as the points Councillor Skelton raises around efficiencies, there's already details been put in the public domain. This pool has been designed by world-renowned architects for a facility like this. There'll be a CHP plant and heat recovery which will then be reused for heating in the pool. 400 spectator seats for a facility which will be a regional facility has been deemed by the experts to be adequate. We've consulted with various swimming clubs who operate in our city but who perform nationally. They're very happy with these plans, very happy with the facility mix, and they believe the seating capacity both for spectators and for swimmers is absolutely adequate. If Councillor Skelton has any information to suggest contrary to that, ideally, you know, we've been talking about this project for over a year. Both Councillor Skelton and Councillor Holmes could have come to me or anybody else connected with this project if they didn't feel comfortable coming to me and raise any of these concerns, but yet they decide to raise them, you know, on the evening of the council cabinet committing to this project and not any time sooner. You know, to go back to basic questions of where this facility is going to be built. You know, we were talking about that in November last year. I just think it's incredible to come here tonight and be asking if that decision is correct. It's ridiculous, Councillor Skelton. Let me finish, please. I still think...
Sorry, Councillor Skelton, it's rude to interrupt Councillor Shanker, so please just listen to the response. You may not be happy with it, and I suspect you're not going to be. And I appreciate he's probably making you look a bit silly now, but please allow him to finish. Yeah, if you can't take the heat, then you know what you need to do. Let Councillor Shanker finish, please. Thank you. Let Councillor Shanker finish, please.
Thank you, Chair. And no intention whatsoever of making Councillor Skelton look silly. I think she's perfectly capable of doing that herself. And just going back to Councillor Holmes' questions about this, I did indeed follow up a conversation with Councillor Robin Wood at the time, who said in this chamber the Conservative group had fully costed plans and a business case to deliver a new swimming pool facility for the city, and his advice to me that night was, for God's sake, young man, just get on with it. So I followed that up with a number of emails, and after about 5 or 6 emails, he told me just to do what they've done in Cardiff. That was the entirety of the advice I got from the Conservative group, and Cardiff does have a very nice facility. I think our facility will be better than Cardiff's facility, and initially I'm told Cardiff City Council actually ran that facility and it didn't go into a trust or an outsource model. So, you know, what we're doing is going to be better than what Cardiff have got, but at the time I'm sure that was right for Cardiff. So I come back to the main report. Chair, I think this is a significant point in this project. The council can afford to build this facility, and we will come up with an option to operate the facility which will minimise the cost to this council. But again, I'll say, you know, we are prepared to pay towards the operation of this facility because we believe it is an important facility, not just for Derby's residents, but Derby's athletes and visitors to our city as well.
Okay, excellent. I think Councillor Skelton has a... Councillor, I beg your pardon, Councillor... Chief Executive, please, Paul Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the point about the VAT position that was raised by Councillor Holmes, the Council operates under what's known as a partial exemption for VAT, and it is true to say there are some risks about major capital projects taking us over that partial exemption, but it's not fatal to the project. There are a number of options you can do. One is to outsource it, one is to run it through a charity, or alternative, the council, if it was to run it, has the opportunity to charge VAT on the prices that it uses. So although there is an issue there, and clearly what we're trying to do is get the best solution for the people of Derby, it isn't actually, VAT will not be an issue that would prevent us from taking this project forward. So I just wanted to clear that up.
Councillor Skelton, please.
Thank you. I was just waiting for an answer to the question about the revenue budget implications. So what would be the repayments over each year?
Thank you, Chair. The budget consultation document, which we published last week, also includes a draft cash flow forecast over the next 5 years and indicates that the council has no need to borrow to support the investment in the pool. It has sufficient resources existing at this moment in time to do that. That's also been validated by our external treasury management advisors, Arling Close. So yes, things may change, but we've spent a great deal of time through the summer working with Cabinet to ensure that we have a very detailed and agreed phasing of all the major capital investments required by the Council. And on that basis, there is no need for any additional borrowing to fund this particular project.
Is that throughout the whole life of the mortgage, for want of a better word?
There is no mortgage. We can fund it out of existing reserves.
Councillor Shanker, would you like to follow up, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just briefly, before obviously you put this to the vote of the Cabinet, just for clarity, both for myself, the project team, and I think importantly for the people of Derby, with your indulgence, can we just ask both group leaders that are here today to actually make it clear, are they in support of this proposal and this facility, or are they opposing it?
Okay, so Councillor Skelton, would you like to answer that? Sorry, Councillor Skelton, could you say that into the microphone, please?
I said Derby definitely needs a new swimming pool, but obviously it's a massive project, so we do need to scrutinise it. You seem to not like us scrutinising for some reason. I was saying some of the papers about loan repayment, 4.19.
Thank you, Councillor Skelton. Councillor Holmes.
I think you know, Chair, that a Conservative administration would have been delivering a pool complex at this stage if we'd have taken control of the council.
Right. Okay. Before I put this to the vote, I do want to deal with another point, the final point you made. You talked about how about the commercialisation of projects, and clearly, you know, there's a big divide between ourselves and the Conservatives. So, as a Labour Party, we believe in public services. Public services, by their very nature, are subsidised through taxpayers' money. The hospitals, the police, local government, you know, there are countless, we are a country of public service. That's why we have the finest public service institutions and infrastructure, and compared to, sadly, some of the poorest countries in the world, which they lack. And we do spend a lot of time in international development projects, not mentioning the obviously minister that's found himself in a bit of problems about at the moment, advising countries around the world how they can have the kind of infrastructure that we have, because we recognise how it is essential to improve the quality of life of ordinary people around the world. So that's the importance of public services. You support a policy of austerity, which sees cuts in public spending. You've made that absolutely clear. As a Conservative, that's what you believe. The consequences, obviously, of that is wholesale forced privatisation of public services. That's the only outcome. So these are the risks, the financial framework which you've actually supported. So if there's only two consequences, we can assume quite clearly from that you believe that there should be no public services funded. Well, you don't believe in any public services, or they would. If they're not funded from the public purse, they are no public services. So you've made that absolutely clear. And I think the other risks we obviously have is Brexit. If we don't get a Brexit deal, if Brexit can, you know, we don't finish those discussions in the best possible position, then there will be financial consequences. So I would encourage you to use whatever influence you've got to lobby Conservative MPs, lobby this Conservative government to get on with sorting the Brexit out, because that could have potentially catastrophic consequences for public services in our country. And that will then affect the modelling that we do on these projects. So it is an ever-changing financial picture. And we've got a spending review coming up, and I hope you will be hoping, like we are, that we will start to see a change. The Prime Minister, when she took office, said there was going to be a complete change from the policy from David Cameron and the previous Chancellor, that was far brutal, it had gone too far. The Prime Minister talked about a fair deal for public services. We have not seen that yet. Our brothers and sisters have seen it in Northern Ireland, and as I said, we don't compete with them on that scale. We want fair treatment across the United Kingdom, and that's what we believe, a fair deal for public services across the United Kingdom. We've not got that deal yet. Conservative authorities have. There are all sorts of examples. Surrey, some of the most prosperous parts of the country, have received huge amounts of financial cash. we've lost out continuously. You've refused to scrutinise that. You've refused to hold your own party to account on that. So if we can fix those kind of things, that has a positive consequences on our budgetary position here. It means we can do all the projects and reduce the risk. That's the big contribution you can make. So, Councillor Shank, I want to thank you for dealing with this. As you've made it clear, this is actually kind of a long journey that started a number of years ago to get us to where we are. And I think we're in a very key position now. We can move forward with this major pledge, which is one of our Super 6 pledges. Okay, so Cabinet to... Yes, there are, I believe, a number of recommendations from Overview Scrutiny. So just to point those out on page 2, I think we're happy to accept both points. So Cabinet to approve the recommendations and the recommendations in Overview Scrutiny. Show of hands, please. Thank you. Agenda item number, budget item 11, budget outturn quarter 2 report. Councillor Shanker, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the budget outturn quarter 2 report summarises the council's overall financial position at the end of September this year, and that compared against the budget set to council on the 15th of February. I don't intend to read out all the numbers, but at 1.1, the individual budgets and the headline measures are there, and sections 4 to 11 provide a more detailed explanation of the various budgets that the council administers. Again, it's a report format which simplifies a very complicated process, and I think what the report does is highlight quite clearly and transparently the financial position of the council.
Okay, so any contributions, questions from anyone on this report? Okay, so Cabinet to approve the recommendations as set out in the report, please. Can I have a show of hands? Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item number 12, performance monitoring. Councillor Shanker again, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the quarter 2 results versus mid-year targets for both the council scorecard and the Derby 50 pledges, the council delivery plan. Key achievements are highlighted at 1.4. The RAM energy tariff has been launched, and I know, Chair, you've played a key part to that. The continued success of projects funded through Crowdfund Derby, which Councillor Raju has competently led on. Significant progress on a number of regeneration and leisure projects, including the swimming pool, but also including those in the city centre master plan that Councillor Rawson has been leading on. A number of other achievements there highlighted within the report in more detail, also to make Derby safe, strong, ambitious and resilient, Chair.
Okay, any questions, contributions from anyone? Okay, so Cabinet to approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Can I show hands, please? Okay, thank you. Okay, so the final item is agenda item report of the Contract and Financial Procedures Matters report. Councillor Shanker, please.
Thank you again, Chair. So a standard report which brings us up to date with a few procedural matters. So primarily here is the authority from Cabinet to apply for 2 grant pots, the Clean Bus Technology Fund and DEFRA's Early Measures Funding for Air Quality. That's the first 2 items, and then at item 6 of the report to approve business rate write-offs, which is a figure of just over £1.2 million, and details have been provided as per the Scrutiny Board's recommendation as well from last night. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any questions, contributions from anyone? Okay. Right, so Cabinet to approve the recommendations in the report. Can I have a show of hands, please? Okay, thank you very much. And that concludes tonight's Cabinet meeting. Thank you very much.